Hi there, Internet friends. It's Brendan O'Connell. If you don't know who I am a political dissident. Yeah, a real one. On the run with 3 warrants for his arrest. I worked with the Persian Gulf Studies Center, a government analyst body in Iran. They offered me political asylum. I've also been offered asylum and permanent residency via Cynthia McKinney in Malaysia. I've just done a huge long rant, but I'm going to back off and do that tomorrow. But I want to quickly put up the Davos reset. People are saying, why aren't you doing that? Well, I've done it, but I realized that I did an extract and put it on BitChute, but not on YouTube. So let me put that bit on right now here on YouTube. It's an 8-minute segment. I hope you enjoy part of the big video coming soon.
Well, that's the little tour. Duck. A duck. Journey continues.
Coming up, our next guest says the 9/11 attacks were an inside job. He also claims that the entire 9/11 Commission report is a lie, and that there is no evidence that any hijackers boarded the planes.
Despite his views, the University of Wisconsin hired him to teach a class on Islam's culture and religion. We're now joined by Associate Lecturer Kevin Barrett from Madison, Wisconsin. Professor Barrett.
Are all false flag operations being carried out by, a special wing of probably U.S. or Western military intelligence.
That was University of Wisconsin professor Kevin Barrett, who has recently drawn criticism for plans to teach an Islamic studies course next fall that will incorporate conspiracy theories that the U.S. government was involved in the events of September 11th. Professor Barrett joins us now. Professor, can you give us the context within which you teach this?
Well, yeah, sure. I'm teaching an introductory course on Islam, and I think it's really important to cover these contemporary political issues, and one of them is, of course, the so-called war on terror. Now, the fact is that the great majority of the world's Muslims believe that 9/11 was an inside job.
Okay, and that's your opinion, right? That's your opinion that there was an inside job.
Back in the book segment tonight, there's a fringe element out there that believes the U.S. government orchestrated 9/11. That is, President Bush and the American military killed 3,000 people. One of those pushing this theory is Kevin Barrett, who actually taught at the University of Wisconsin this fall. He joins us now from Madison. There's no sense in debating this issue. I had one of your compadres on a couple of months ago. I don't believe a word you say. You're not going to change your position. My best argument is there's so much anti-American press out there. If you had a shred of legitimate evidence, it'd be on the front page of Le Monde or some other place that wants the USA to be embarrassed. So we don't see these reports anywhere. I don't believe you have anything. But you go on and you continue to say the Bush administration, American military, killed 3,000 people. How has that impacted your life? What has happened to you since you started doing this?
Well, Bill, it's actually been one of the best things that ever happened to me. And in fact, we're not a fringe element. The latest polls show that 84% of the American people do not accept the 9/11 Commission report. Only 16% of the American people believe the government is telling the truth about 9/11. What
poll is that?
That's a New York Times poll that came out just several months ago.
I don't have that poll in front of me.
So actually, you're in the fringe element, Bill.
Yeah, I don't believe that that's true, but go ahead. What has happened?
Well, why don't you look it up? You can Google it up in 5 seconds.
Absolutely, we'll check it out.
Again, he was arrested in New Orleans last August after he got into a fight while distributing material for the Fair Play for Cuba Committee. Here is the interview he gave at that time to station WDSU-TV in New Orleans.
No, sir, I am not a communist, and I think that the red herring and so forth is rather ridiculous to toss into this conversation.
Then are you a Marxist?
Well, I have studied Marxist philosophy, yes, sir, and also other philosophers.
But are you a Marxist? I think you did admit on an earlier radio interview that you consider yourself a Marxist.
Well, I would very definitely say that I am a Marxist. That is correct. But that does not mean, however, that I'm a communist.
What is the difference between the two?
Well, there's a great deal of difference. Several American parties in several countries are based on Marxism, such as Ghana. Certain countries have characteristics of a socialist system, such as Great Britain with its socialized medicine. These, then, are the differences between an outright communist country and countries which adhere to leftist or Marxist principles.
In your work with the Fair Play for Cuba Committee,
What are you advocating?
We advocate restoration of diplomatic, trade, and tourist relations with Cuba.
Welcome to beautiful Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. We're standing beneath the Bank of China building with the famous eye in the pyramid. This city, Kuala Lumpur, is the commercial hub of Southeast Asia, thanks to its position close to the Straits of Malacca, one of the world's most important choke points. The British noticed the importance of the Straits of Malacca long ago, just like Gibraltar and other places like that. They thought it was real important to dominate that choke point in order to help them rule the world. And those who are trying to rule the world through technology and finance are still very interested in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm here with Brendan O'Connell, one of the world's great info activists, and we are dreaming big dreams about perhaps conferences here in Kuala Lumpur. We have a relatively friendly government. Dr. Mahathir Mohamad, the Prime Minister, is a 9/11 truth activist himself. He hosted the Kuala Lumpur War Crimes Tribunals, and he is an enemy of the world banking cartel, or at least honest opposition who's not afraid to speak his mind. So we could have some pretty good conferences here, and we're talking about doing conferences possibly on alternatives to the global riba usury financial system, and also, and dearer to Brendan's heart, on the techno sector, that is domination of strategic technology by Zionists and other bad actors, how we're going to take back our control over technology to use it to make a better world for people rather than to enslave people. So these would be really good conferences, and I hope that some of my contacts here in Malaysia, and I've made some really interesting contacts, might be able to help put together those conferences, and maybe you can all come join us.
That would be great, Kevin, and all I can say is
we've lost vertical control of our airplane.
I hope no more aircraft disappear, and Malaysia, could Malaysia be the last stand, a high technology hub in its own right? Well, all we can do is ask and try. It's been great chatting with Kevin. Wow, this guy's, I've always liked Kevin, we've disagreed on stuff, but wow, this guy's lived quite an interesting life, and I could talk for hours. In fact, we're worn out. We've talked non-stop.
You calling somebody else having an interesting life, I mean, that's a real compliment. I mean, you know what you're talking about, man.
Well, maybe there'll be a book or a movie. I think Brad Pitt can play me.
Okay.
Who's playing you? Harrison Ford?
That's okay with me.
Yeah. We'll sort that. We'll sort the important things out later, but till then, go Malaysia. We hope that in this age of deceit, in this age where right is left and left is right, up is down, and east is west, that we can get some sort of sanity and adult conversation on really important issues, and I think perhaps Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur could be it. As the Malaysians would say, jumpa lagi, jumpa nanti, and hoda hafez. Ciao for now. Good on you, mates.
Very good. I didn't go out with Dr. Mahathir yet, but I don't even know if Dr. Mahathir would find a better restaurant than this. Well, people come to Kuala Lumpur. You know, we should have a convention here. We're talking, or some kind of meetup, and there are different ideas here. But one of them that I've been floating around with some local friends is having a conference on fixing the monetary system, because that is becoming a big issue as the balance of forces reaches the point that Dr. Mahathir can actually say, here, let's try and set up a gold-backed Asian currency alternative to the dollar so we can avoid the U.S. sanctions and trade with Iran. So he knows how far he can push things, but now he's pushing them further because he knows he can get away with it because there are forces in Russia and China, for example, that agree with him. So he knows how far he can push things, but now he's pushing them further because he knows he can get away with it because there are forces in Russia and China, for example, that agree with him. Because there are forces in Russia and China, for example, that agree with him. In Europe, even, a lot of the high rollers now agree with them that there's a problem with this petrodollar hegemony and the whole banking system run by Zionists, as you know. So anyway, he's now pushing for this alternative gold-backed Asian currency. Could be really, and this is the place to do it. Because right now, Mahathir, the guy who actually wants to help torpedo the petrodollar and change the world currency system, is back in power, riding high here. the high rollers now agree with him that there's a problem with this petrodollar hegemony and the whole banking system run by Zionists, as you know. So anyway, he's now pushing for this alternative gold-backed Asian currency. Could be really, and this is the place to do it. Because right now, Mahathir, the guy who actually wants to help torpedo the petrodollar and change the world's currency system, is back in power, riding high here. out there, the guy who actually wants to help torpedo the petrodollar and change the world currency system, is back in power, riding high here. No, they've already shot down too many Malaysian airlines. If they do it anymore, it's going to look really bad. So we're safe there.
Look, I agree, but the point is this: is realistically, why don't we just free America of this Zionist influence?
That sounds like a plan. Well, yeah, let's do that. That sounds like a plan. Well, yeah, let's do that.
He's meeting the highest levels of government in Malaysia and Iran when he told me this. I refused to take part. I didn't feel like declaring war on America with good old Kremlin Kev. Well, Taliban's Pakistan, for God's sake. That's an outside power.
Taliban is the local anti-corruption police. That's all they are.
No, well, they're run by Pakistani ISI in Israel.
No, they were an indigenous religious movement.
They were armed by Israel.
Anti-corruption militia.
Yeah.
And once they had success as the local anti-corruption militia, which people flocked to because the lawless drug lords and thugs were running around raping and pillaging everywhere. And so the Taliban got it under control and said, look, we're going to do what the Quran says. If you can't change something with your hand, you change it with your tongue, and at least hate it with your heart. Well, we're going to change it with our hand.
Yeah, we're going to hang you from cranes and behead you, and it's lovely. It's great.
No, Taliban justice isn't as bad as you think.
Funding the Taliban.
Why are the Taliban so
Who was funding the Taliban?
I think the Taliban got a very bad rap. They did some bad things, blowing up the Buddha statue. I think that's a sign
Kevin,
that they're Wahhabis.
Who was funding the Taliban?
They were getting a little bit of Saudi money, but they were mostly running on their indigenous research.
Opium profits.
No, they shut down the opium industry. That's the first time that the opium industry.
They shut it down and they sold from their reserves.
I don't know which they you mean, but...
Put it this way, politically, do you think what you're saying is politically going advantageous as an American? Remember, you're an American citizen. America is not built on Sharia law. Saudi wants Sharia law, good luck to them. Brunei and Malaysia want Sharia law, good luck to them.
I'm not saying America should start handing victims' families rifles to execute murderers in stadiums.
Why not fix America instead of bag it? That's all I'm saying. Yes, the American system is not good, but it's fixable, and I'd rather that...
That doesn't mean that you have to cheer on the Americans.
It's not about cheering. It's not about cheering on.
They're genocidal war criminals.
It's not about cheering on.
The global hawks are flying with 7 cargo containers full of heroin every day from Pakistan.
Yeah, and guess who's running that?
The Americans.
It's not the Americans, it's the private security contractors linked in heavily with Israeli intelligence. And those Americans are American Jews and dual nationalism are American citizens, Israeli citizens, Kevin.
Yeah, I don't think
it's always America.
I think the Jews are disproportionately represented, but I think...
Yes, and they're Eric Prince's friends. They're the same Iran-Contra network. It's the same.
So those are the people that you want to keep occupied.
Yeah, it's not. You keep saying, this is the problem I have, and we have these very vigorous debates. Listen, I love Kevin. We've had some great vigorous debates. Hear us out. I love it. We actually get on really well.
Okay,
but listen, when you say America, why don't you name it? We need to name it. It's not America. Right. It's a subversive. What would we call it? Zionism? Or we could call it, I don't know. Maybe we need a name. We need to have this out. What is the name? I call it that Iran-Contra rat network. Rat lines.
Yeah, there's some of that.
Drugs, Colombia, and who was there? Oh, what's his name? The Israeli agent that was all there. They were all through there. They're Colombian dual nationals. They're born in Israel, half of them, running the drug trade.
Well, there is a global organized crime syndicate that is disproportionately ethnically Jewish.
Oh, the Swahilis.
Israel. Yeah, those people. Yeah, and they're disproportionately involved in a lot of this bad stuff. Maybe most of it. I don't know. But there's still the U.S. military has no business in Afghanistan. It should get out. It never should have.
Well, but the point is, they could have gone in there and done exactly what they were meant to do. It was handled so bad. It was like Iraq.
What they were meant to do? They were meant to turn the drug lords loose. That's what they were.
Well, no.
That's what they were meant to do, and that's what they did. And they succeeded. They brought the drug trade back, and now the biggest banks and corporations in the world.
Have you ever seen interviews with American soldiers who went there and had great relations with the locals and were building stuff and building schools? Listen, we know why. And then they said, and then in came these private security contractors.
Yeah. That's right.
That's not the American military.
I'm not. Yeah. I mean, when the American military first came in, a lot of people kind of, what are you going to do? Okay, let's make the best of that situation kind of thing. But the overall sentiment in any country that's militarily invaded is, of course, going to be unhappy with being occupied by an invader. It's just human nature.
I don't know. I've spoken to a lot of Pashtun Afghanis. They were pro-America until they started getting shot. Do you think every
That's not what I've
Afghani?
heard from. I mean, even from our veterans today, the general attitude towards things is very much in line with you. More that I don't think there's any publication on earth that shares your outlook as much as VT does. And we have a Pashtun Afghani guy who has written a number of articles. And yeah, he kind of soft pedals the national humiliation of being invaded and occupied a little bit, but you can still tell it's there. That the whole 9/11 being such a grotesque hoax, and the Afghan invasion having been arranged 2 months before, the strategic minerals there, which are down the line, the big one of the big treasures, the idea of trying to enhance your global strategic position, to make money, etc. By invading somebody's country, building military bases.
Who organized that? Did Americans organize that invasion?
Afghanistan, yeah, I think so. I think Brzezinski, the pro-American side, was all in favor of invading Afghanistan. And
Who runs Wall Street? Who runs the banking and finance, the media, Hollywood, everything? Who runs it? Brzezinski? Americans? Pan-American nationalists? Who runs it, Kevin? Come on, simple question. Who runs it?
Probably about 50 to 55% Jews.
No, come on.
45 to 50% non-Jews.
No, I mean run it. Not necessarily work in it, run it. 100%. 100%.
Think so?
Oh, come on. I don't know many Catholics at the top of Wall Street and JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, the Federal Reserve.
In terms of the think tanks that were behind the policy that led to the invasion.
Yeah, but who fund the think tanks and pay the bills?
Which one? There's some total Zionist
Who
think tanks.
funds? Well, I'm sure they got some good cop, bad cops going. Who runs the money supply?
Okay, as I read Brzezinski, and I see Brzezinski's faction as the people who were all for the invasion of Afghanistan. Obama is one of those. Obama, from day one, he was saying the invasion of Afghanistan was great. The invasion of Iraq was terrible. And the subtext of that was the invasion of Afghanistan was for the U.S. interest in grabbing the middle of the grand chessboard, whereas the invasion of Iraq was to crush Israel's enemies. That was basically Brzezinski's position, Obama's position. That was the American position.
And the main aim is to make Israel the center of the Pan-Asian, Eurasian superstate. It's going to be the center, the bunting cloverleaf map.
Well, that's one of the players on the chessboard.
No, it's not one of the players. It is the player.
Yeah.
It's the player. I can trace it all back to Israel. It's the bunker from which they spy, where they sit comfortably, and it's run by Russians. I'm sorry, it's run at the top levels by ethnic Russians, whether they're first, second, or third generation Russian, from the Russian Empire. Look at the numbers.
The Russian mob.
Call it what you will.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, one thing I like about Russian Jews, they're very nationalistic, they're very Russian. They always say, I'm not Jewish, I'm a Russian Jew.
Yeah.
At least they're nationalistic.
Yeah.
I told Jeremy Roth Kushel to stay away from him. Kushel made a point of being even closer to him, and the joke reprobate Gordon Duff, who freely admits he talks and writes horsepucky 70% of the time because he is just so special. And if he didn't, they might kill him.
What suggestions do you make to the people who want to make a difference and want to make this country a free country again?
Well, I'd like to tell you to only go on the internet and read alternative news websites. The problem is 95% of the websites that say 80% of what Mike and I are saying take the we've been hijacked. My own words show up almost continually. My God, in the mainstream press from over the last few years. I don't know any imaginable way you can get information. First of all, because about 30%, based on what I believe, and you know what? Who says I'm right? But according to my beliefs, and I have as good access to information as anyone in the world, probably, anyone I know of, about 30% of what's on veterans today is patently false. About 40% of what I write is at least purposely partially false, because if I didn't write false information, I wouldn't be alive. I simply have to do that. I write anything I write between the lines.
I mean, seriously, is this a joke? Does this man honestly believe this horse pucky?
If I didn't write false information, I wouldn't be alive.